So these are like standard experimental laboratory rats. After they acclimate to our facility here, we run through the parts of our experiment where we kind of do our manipulations. One of the specific types of tests that we do is a forced swim, and they don't know that they're going to be eventually taken out of the water because they're essentially swimming for their own survival. It could include having wet bedding. It could include like strobe lights. It could include loud noises. These kind of rotated through these stressors like every day for like a period of 6 weeks. At the very end of the experiment, then that's where we terminate the animals and we do all the actual neurobiology to understand what's happening inside of the brain. We order them in from vendors, just like you're ordering on Amazon. And these are giant facilities where they have all different types of lab rats. You can actually custom order them too. We spend a lot of time messing around with genetics of animals. And I've made a lot of different mutant, essentially, animals. Some of them glow different colors. I have reporter mice whose brains will glow in specific colors. We do that all the time. The model that we're using, which is the rat model, is not actually a suicide model. Humans are the only ones that have the will and basically the capability to self-harm their self in a way that it's like a terminal thing. We also looked a little bit at maladaptive behaviors, something that's not necessarily in the animal's best interest, that they will start to develop, and that sometimes happens after they've been exposed to chronic stressors over a long period of time. You can put an animal in the water and they'll swim for a period of time, and when they get too tired, at some point they're going to stop swimming and they'll just give up. If the animal gives up very, very early, we would consider that to be a maladaptive behavior, because essentially they're saying, I'm done, like this is it. They have no idea that they're going to survive this experiment, and animals that are stressed and have been exposed to chronic stressors will actually give up earlier than animals that don't.
We will slice the brains and using our cryostat that allows us to get really thin sections and really analyze different parts of the brain in better detail. Once we've looked under the microscope, we're able to take it into secondary analysis.
Our overall hypothesis that we were testing was that chronic stress leads to inflammation in the brain, and we were interested in knowing if there's any specific areas that become inflamed in the brain. These have been shown already in human studies to be have more inflammation in people who go through with a suicidal completion than people who don't. So we had a little bit of information based on human studies, and then also other researchers have been kind of tackling the same question. What does stress do to the brain, and where does it pop up in different brain regions? One region of the brain that we looked at first was called the nucleus accumbens, which is involved in pairing motivation with action. And we actually did find already that there was more neuroinflammation for the rats that were exposed to stress versus the rats that were non-stressed. Knowing where and if different regions of the brain are affected by neuroinflammation as a result of stress, I think is important. Right? Our behaviors are the result of many different regions of your brain all working together collectively in order to influence the things that you do or influence the way that you feel. Another thing that we could get out of this research is to be able to identify very specific pathways, maybe involving different types of inflammatory cells, that we could then do some more research on to figure out, can we block this? Can we add a specific compound that might affect inflammation and therefore would reduce your response to stress and make you less maladaptive or less likely to harm yourself?
I think that the ethics they're in place. I think the ethics are in the right direction that we have to be into. I think rat death is horrible, but I think suicide's worse.
The question that we need to answer has to have some sort of benefit that outweighs the costs of what we try to do. We're doing experiments with animals, and I personally believe that animals have value, and that the life of anything that's living has value. And at the end of the day, what we can say is the work that we're doing, we feel like is important enough, and it has enough application to humans and to people who are suffering from things like depression and suicidal ideation, that what we're doing in terms of our experiments are going to be necessary, and they're going to provide some sort of future benefit. Limiting human suffering is important, and anybody who has dealt with this stuff personally, or from either friends or family members, or dealing with themselves, and just knows how bad it is. And that makes it even more important for us to basically get answers to these types of questions that we're asking. We are tackling a very small part of a very big, major challenge. Suicide is one of the leading causes of death for young people worldwide, particularly people who are in the ages of like 18 to 26, in that age range right now. And it's going to take a lot of people and a lot of small labs like ours, and also big labs and nationally funded research in order to tackle this crisis as it is right now. And so I feel like the work that we're doing is very important, and we're one small part of a much bigger system. They're all working towards a common goal.